Alright, so today we're going to talk about Exoprimal. I played the beta, it was pretty fun, and I thought I'd pick it up on launch because I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting. But with the game being out for a few weeks now, I thought I'd talk about it. So I want to talk about what the game is, the gameplay loop, monetization, my opinions. I think that's about it. We'll see. And before I get into anything, I want to say that if you are playing with this with friends, if you want to play with this friends, even though this is a multi-platform game, a cross-play platform game, coordinate with your people and decide to pick up on the same platform. As of right now, the party system thing runs through the storefront of whatever platform you're on. So you can only party with Steam players if you're on Steam. Xbox players, you can only party with people on Xbox or if they're on the Microsoft Store version, and then PlayStation with PlayStation. You cannot cross-platform party. So first off, what is Exoprimal? It is a third-person hero shooter with PvP and PvE to it. All right, so on your first time booting up the game, you're gonna go through a tutorial mission, and then eventually you're gonna end up here at this starting screen. So real quick, let's talk about the main menu. You got the home, wargame, hangar, career, and database. Home is where you access your party system. You can queue up for matches. You see their ads on the bottom as well. Wargame just has where you queue up for matches. You do Savage Gauntlet, which we'll talk about later, and then there's also training mode. Hangar is where you customize your exosuits. Career is basically just stats. Database is your story progress, which is what I want to talk about. Because how this game tackles story is very interesting and very different from anything I've ever experienced. Because if you go back to home, you go back to wargame, there's only dino survival to it. We're ignoring Savage Gauntlet for now. Your story and your multiplayer matches, all that stuff, that's all the exact same thing. So how you progress the story is actually you just do matches and then you unlock cutscenes in the database, you watch those, then you go back and do more dino survival. Once you get to certain percents in your database, you will unlock story missions, which then you just queue into a match like normally, and then it'll probably be your story mission. There's like a good handful of these, I'd say 5, I think. And if you have done them once, you are able to queue into somebody else's story mission. Dino survival. Now when you click on it, you can pick PvE, PvP, or random. As you can see in the text, you get more experience for doing random. So most people probably just do random. That's what I do. Okay, so now we're going to talk about an actual match. So it doesn't matter which one you pick. The first part of the match is all going to look the same. As you see, matches are split up into 2 segments. The first segment is always going to be a 2-team PvE race. If you look up at the top of the screen, there's 2 colors on the sides, and then there's boxes that you fill out. Each one of those is an objective, and you're just trying to race the other team to get done with the first half. For the most part, these routes and events seem pretty linear from my experience. And that's really it for the first half. You just want to get through it as fast as possible so you can get a head start over the other team in the second half. The second half of the match is going to be where PvP or PvE comes into play. But regardless of which one it is, there is one big change no matter what. That change is the Dominator. Both teams will get a Dominator throughout the second half, but the team that starts off behind will get theirs first. The Dominator is an item that players can pick up that allows them to take control of 1 to 3 dinosaurs. A T-Rex, a Carnosaurus, or a Triceratops. Proper timing on using these can really turn the tide of the match. It is a single use and only one person of each team can use one. So when your second half of the match is a PvE match, it is basically the exact same thing as the first part of the match. You're just going to be doing objectives and you're going to race the other team to clear faster. The main difference is going to be the existence of a Dominator, because along with them, a popular objective is going to be one that is protecting a node, something that can break, something that a Dominator can really slow down for the other team. So even though this is the PvE mode, there is slight PvP since you do have to deal with the Dominator, but otherwise the rest of the players are phased out in 2 different instances. When it comes to the PvP mode, both teams will actually be in the same playing field. And then it will pick one of many different events that will happen. Just to give a few examples, there's going to be one where you had to, both teams have a cube and they had to walk it to the end of the match. It goes faster with more people on it with a cap of 3 players, I believe. You'll start off at different sides of the maps, but the route of the cube will always end up at the same spot. So at the end, you're going to have a lot of PvP, a lot of player conflict, and you can destroy the other team's cube to slow them down. There's another game mode where you pick up items on the ground and you have to just hit a certain limit. When you kill somebody from the other team, you do get extra points as well. And then the last example is a general domination type map. So there's 3 points on the map and you can just control them and you get more points for it. So then you have to deal with players and dinosaurs at the same time. Just remember there's a few examples and there's a lot more modes than that. I think how they have story set up is good and bad. So it's good in a sense that it keeps all the players in one place. Because if you consider your average shooter, yes, they have all these different modes, but then there's generally a playlist that has all these modes in it, and it's just RNG which one you get. The only choices you have in this game is if you're doing PvE, PvP, or random, and you get more experience for doing random. So most people are just going to do random. So since the entire community is flooded into a single playlist, it's going to feel more active, more alive, because that's just where everybody is. On the flip side, it does feel kind of lazy, you know? You don't really have a dedicated story mode. Besides the first first story mission, I do actually like most of the story missions in there. The first one's kind of a drag where you follow an NPC around. That's all far as get. But like after that, they come into some pretty unique battles and some pretty fun ones. You do them once you get to that progress of the story, and then after that, it's just RNG if you get filled in with somebody else doing the story mission, which is a bit of a drag. You can't redo them on will. And those story missions give a lot of experience, so it's really good to get into it because you want to level up your exosuits. Additionally, it is nice that with this game mode, with this design, you can party up with your friends whenever you want. It doesn't matter what part of the story you're in, your progress or anything like that. Somebody with a 100% story can party up with somebody with 0%. Now the downside is you are limited to the lowest person in the party on what they have unlocked, because your unlock is going to be linked to how much you have into the story. So all the maps, the modes, the variations, stuff like that, you're going to get more of them as you progress through the story, which leads me to another thing I didn't like. The rate of unlocking new maps mode is extremely slow. The first 8 hours, I was basically just doing the same map and the same modes over and over. It was always just protect the cube, push the payload, whatever you want to call it, or just a standard PvE, all on that same city map that you're going to see a ton of. And obviously with the game of this design, it's going to be a repetitive gameplay loop, but it was just too much at that point. It did get better the later I got, because again, I got more maps, more modes, and all that kind of stuff, but the start was pretty rough and made people question why they were playing, or at least it did for a couple people in my group. They just didn't really feel motivated to keep going, because it's like, oh well, I've been doing the same thing over and over. Whereas that Neo TRX I did in the beta, where's all this other stuff that was here before and now I can't get it because it was the launch a couple of days. We didn't know how this all unlocks and stuff worked. Now we do, but now I've kind of lost half my group to Remnant 2. So now the reason why I didn't talk about Savage Gauntlet earlier, or I didn't want to mention it that much, is because you have to 100% the database before Savage Gauntlet even unlocks. Savage Gauntlet is a time limited event where they intend to change out the mission every week. So when you clear a story, you do get to see the splash screen for Savage Gauntlet talking about it, and the splash image has Neo TRX on it, Neo stuff on it. So we were really hoping that that's what we're going to get into. That's what this mode was going to have. It's going to be all the stuff that we didn't get to see that often. The mission itself rotates every week, and so far we are way off. Now I think me and the community had pretty high expectations for this mode to kind of spice it up and make it just a more fun game, to be honest. And I think most people are pretty let down by it. I have some pros and cons to say about it. I think there are things that's good about it, things that are bad about it. So at first I thought it was pretty dumb to have this locked behind clearing the game. After doing it, however, I understand why they did it, because this mode does raise the difficulty on it, and they do want you to have your exosuits leveled so you have higher leveled mods. Now unfortunately, by the time this mode came out, I kind of lost all the people I played with. Like I said, 2 went to Remnant, and then the other one's having a graphics bug with the game, which only like 2 other people have reported, so I doubt they're gonna fix it. And now he's doing suspicious things with bears. So my experience with this mode has been the pug experience, and it's been rough. This is a mode that really shines when you have a group, a party, a pre-made, because you actually do need to cooperate and work together. While I think in Dino Survival you can play any suit at any time and do pretty good with them, that is not Savage Gauntlet. Since it is a limited map, limited spawns, always set, always static, and it is a speedrun on a leaderboard, not versus another team with variables, there are definitive good choices to pick and bad choices to pick that you wouldn't want for this stuff. Of course, the ongoing meme for week 1 and week 2 so far is just, hey, pick a bunch of teams full of barrages. Meanwhile, for week 1 and week 2, Skywave just didn't feel like a good pick for this at all. Meanwhile, Krieger shows to be a very good choice for any pug team, any group, because you have the shield that's going to protect your VTOL, because you protect them in both of them so far. But yeah, this is not the mode where you want those 2 stubborn people that are support 1 tricks who won't switch off, because people will just rage quit and leave the mode the moment they look like a bad run. And because this game does not support cross-platform partying, the people who I do have decent runs with, I can't ever group with them because they're all on Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. They're not on Steam because there's probably only like 5 people on Steam. So yeah, Savage Gauntlet so far has just been a PvE experience, 1 team, no competitive between it. It's just competitive on a time limit. Since the mission does change every week, I think it does have potential to be a really fun and good mode and have just a very unique experience. It's just not really one good for pugging, and it really tests the ability of the suits, where you really just see a fall off on certain suits. Quick breakdown on the suits. They're divided into assault, tank, or support, which is, DPS, tank, or support. And just as a fun fact, this game does not have role queue. So it goes without saying, but every exosuit plays very different. You're gonna have skills on Q, E, and then also you're gonna have an alt. Deadeye is your very standard character, Call of Duty. He's got a rifle, he's got a noob tube. Zephyr is a very fast mobile melee suit. The easiest way to sum up Barrage is he's Junkrat. You just lob over a bunch of explosions. Vigilant is your sniper character, and just to keep up with Overwatch references, it's kind of like Widowmaker, where you had to stay scoped in hard to get a a buff on your shot. Roadblock really just fits the tank role to a T. He's got a shield, he's got a taunt, and he punches things. Krieger, not so much. He does have a taunt, but he does have a dome shield for other people to get into, and he just has a big LMG that just rips things. And then Murasame, the old study the blade. He's got a very limited taunt. He doesn't have a shield, but he has a counter, and he is melee focused as well, obviously. When it comes to your supports, Witch Doctor is your bread and butter. It's got an AoE heal and a target heal. Meanwhile, its attacks is limited range, low damage, but it helps stun. The easiest way to describe Skywave is basically, for Overwatch players, what if Pharah was your healer? Basically, you can push yourself up in the sky, float there, and then you just shoot out projectiles that will either heal or damage. Without the mod, they're kind of slow moving. Additionally, it does have a mob gathering skill. Nimbus is a character that has two modes, healing and damage. So she can do pretty decent damage and healing, but you really can't do them at the same time as opposed to the other two. But the exchange as well, hers is just more potent in both regards. Additionally, you can equip your suits with chips and equipment. Every suit has 3 chip slots. Gray chips are universal chips that can put in any slot on any exosuit, but there's also red, blue, and yellow chips, which are exosuit specific. You have to level up your exosuit and then buy them to use them. Red is generally a primary attack, and then blue and yellow are for skills. All chips can be leveled up to level 5. With in-game currency, you can level them all up to level 5. Equipments are items that you can bring to battle, and they're usable with a cooldown just like any skill. Now, I actually have a lot of fun with most of these suits. There are some that kind of iffy, like Roadblock. Just playing that generic tank isn't really my style, but I have leveled them up quite a bit because I just don't really like just sitting around with a shield and punching things. But the thing is, you're going to actually want to level up every suit to level 20 eventually, probably, because in their first major update, they're going to have the alpha suits unlocked, which is the same suits, but they're going to have different weapons and different skills. So that Roadblock is no longer going to be punching things. It's actually going to have a placeable shield and a shotgun. Details on all these suits should be on their website, so check that out if you want. But as stated before, I think all the suits are very viable in Dino Survival. It's just Savage Gauntlet, there are just some definite fall offs, and you really just get to see how good Barrage is over the rest. I think the modules, the chips, that system there is really nice because then it helps really make your character a bit different, because even though there are going to be preferred builds, there's going to be a better build. This gives you the freedom to really design a character for PvE or PvP maps, or even different kind of modes. So you can set up, say, your Deadeye just for being your PvE mule, so you just have a setup on its chips just for PvE for the first half of the match, and then if it stays PvE, yes, you can stay on it, or if it goes to PvP, you can switch to a certain character that you maybe have set up for that kind of mode. And I think most of the suits have potential to be a good PvE or PvP character just because of the variations of the chips. Though obviously there are going to be some better than others. Alright, so let's talk about money. This is a buy to play game. You know, this is 60 USD full price game. This game is on Game Pass, which would explain why I'd say 90% of the people I play with are crossplay. Now, Nimbus, Vigilant, and Murasame are level unlocked characters, or you can pay 15 bucks to get them unlocked. On top of that, there are cosmetics, and yes, there is a battle pass. It's extremely standard. There is a free route and a paid route. The paid route is pure cosmetics. There is no currency in it that I saw, and that's really about it when it comes to monetization. There is no pay to win or anything like that, but yes, there is a base game cost, a battle pass, and microtransactions on top, just no power through it. Personally, I don't think this is the right way, the right model for them to go. As I mentioned earlier, there's so little amount of people that actually play this game on Steam. Reports say that 97% of the player base is on Game Pass. And I think this game should be free to play because it's really hard to justify buying this game, to be honest. Or at least reduce the base price of the game. I've seen a lot of people with skins from the pass, from the premium pass. I know there are a lot of people who are buying that. And all the people who I see with that stuff is crossplay players. It's people who have Game Pass. They didn't buy the game, so they're buying the pass. Meanwhile, I don't see that many PC players doing it, and personally I'm not doing it either. It's just cosmetics, thank God. But yeah, I am really happy that there is no power to buy in this game. I just don't believe for this type of game with this limited amount of content that it should have a paywall to play it. Considering again 97% of the player base did not buy the game, I think it'd be worthwhile to put it free to play and just bank off more people trying to just buy season passes. Now, something I haven't really talked about yet is loot boxes. Surprisingly enough, they don't go in the monetization section, so they didn't really have a spot in the video so far. In this game, they're called war chests, and you just get them for free every other player level. So the game overall is pretty generous with them, and the rates of the legendary skins aren't really that bad. When you get a dupe of a legendary skin, you get 7k coins back, and the most expensive thing you can buy is a level 5 chip upgrade, which is 5k. Which, on the topic of that coin, that currency, Bitcoin, the game is also extremely generous with that as well. It doesn't seem like it at the start because you're going to have a lot of things you want to buy, but you're going to get and have a lot. So yeah, the in-game currency and the loot boxes, the war chests, those are handled really well. There is no monetization connected to it, and you just get a lot. So I think that covers all the major topics. Now I just want to rant on a little bit about just random other things. As I mentioned at the start of the video, only being able to party with your platform is pretty whack. I hope they do fix that and have so you can play with anybody on any platform. The game itself looks and feels great. It's Capcom, it's the RE engine, it feels smooth, it's comfortable, it's buttery. I've had no performance issues or crashes, which isn't obvious. I'm playing this on Steam. I'm gonna be honest, this is not a game that I can just play on end hours and hours a day, but when I was hopping on like every day or every other day for like maybe an hour or two with the boys, it was actually a really fun time because it's the people that made the experience with it. With them playing Remnant 2 and Baldur's Gate, I've had to pug recently, which I've done pugging for a lot of this content here that you're seeing in the background of this video, and it was a pretty rough time and it wasn't nearly as fun, and I couldn't play as long. As much as I don't like it when players just one trick, one roll, and one type of character, I'm pretty glad there's not roll queue. One example would be is that I don't trust most Nimbus players. He is a support character, a healer, that has the ability to change your guns into a heal mode or a damage mode, and most of them just stick in damage mode most of the time and let people die. At the same time, it makes her a really viable second healer in your party just because you have healing and damage with her. Granted, she's not going to be the peak damage, but she's still pretty viable. That's kind of how I feel about a suit like Krieger. He's a tank, but he doesn't have a taunt, so he's really good at protecting objectives and just keeping the party safe, but he doesn't keep the boss off a node, which is kind of annoying. But at that time, like having a Triceratops and a protection node is nice to have a roadblock. So again, to sum it up, it is a fun game, very limited. I don't think it's really worth the full price tag. If you get it for cheap or if you get it on Game Pass, I think it's a good time. The game does definitely have room to grow, and I hope it does get better. So let me know if you want me to do another video about this game. I could probably talk about the suits a little bit more in detail on what I think of them.